Stop. Read that again. They planted evidence against you. Let that sink in for a second. These people, these cowards, these snakes slithering through your life, pretending to be grass. They actually sat down, planned, coordinated, and executed a scheme to destroy you. They manufactured lies. They fabricated stories. They constructed an entire false reality designed specifically to bury you so deep that no one would ever find the truth. And you know what's absolutely hilarious? What's so cosmically perfect that I almost can't stop laughing? They failed. Not only did they fail, but in their desperate, pathetic attempt to frame you, to paint you as the villain in their twisted little story, they accidentally ripped the mask off their entire operation. Every single connection, every hidden alliance, every whispered conversation they thought was secret, every text message they thought was deleted, every lie they told to every person, all of it exposed because of their own actions. They built a trap for you and walked into it themselves. They dug your grave and fell in head first. They loaded the gun, aimed it at your reputation, and somehow shot themselves in the face. And now they're bleeding out in front of everyone who ever believed them. Beautiful, isn't it? Let me tell you exactly what happened here, because I don't think you fully understand the magnitude of what just took place. You were minding your business, living your life, trying to heal, trying to grow, trying to become something better than what your pain tried to make you. And while you were doing that, while you were focused on your own evolution, a group of people were holding secret meetings about you. Yeah, meetings about you. They were sitting in rooms, in group chats, in private messages, discussing how to take you down, how to make you look crazy, how to make everyone believe you were the problem. They were comparing notes, sharing strategies, coordinating their stories so that when the time came, their lies would sound like truth, and your truth would sound like lies. They thought they were so smart, so calculated, so untouchable. They thought you'd never find out. They thought you'd just crumble under the weight of their fabricated accusations. They thought you'd spend so much time defending yourself against their planted evidence that you'd never have the energy to look deeper, to see the strings, to trace the puppet masters. But they underestimated something critical. They underestimated you. See, what they didn't account for, what their limited little minds couldn't possibly comprehend, is that you've been through worse. You've survived psychological warfare that would have broken their entire bloodline. You've walked through fires they couldn't even imagine. You've been betrayed so many times that your nervous system now operates like a military-grade detection system. You don't just see lies anymore, you feel them before they're spoken. You sense manipulation like sharks sense blood in water. You've been trained by trauma to notice what others miss. So when they planted their evidence, when they scattered their breadcrumbs of deception, they didn't realize they were leaving a trail. Not a trail to you, a trail to themselves. A map of their entire network drawn in their own handwriting. Let's talk about what they actually did, because the details matter here. They went to people you trusted. They whispered poison in willing ears. They said things like, "I'm just concerned about them, and I've noticed some things that worry me, and I didn't want to say anything," but they wrapped their venom in fake concern. They dressed their destruction in the costume of care. They shared screenshots, edited ones, cropped ones. Screenshots that told half-truths designed to create full lies. They showed conversations out of context. They presented your words without the situations that created them. They turned your moments of vulnerability into weapons. They took the things you trusted them with and twisted them into evidence against you. And then they sat back. They waited. They watched to see the damage unfold. But something strange happened. The damage didn't hit you. It hit them. Because the people they went to, at least some of them, weren't as stupid as they hoped. Some of those people started asking questions, started noticing inconsistencies, started wondering why these accusations came out of nowhere, started paying attention to who was spreading what and when. And that's when the threads started unraveling. One person mentioned something to another person. A screenshot was traced back to its source. A story didn't match up. A timeline didn't make sense. Someone remembered a conversation that contradicted the narrative. Someone else noticed that the loudest accuser had their own motives, their own agenda, their own history of doing exactly what they were accusing you of. The web they built to trap you became the web they got caught in. And suddenly, everyone could see the spiders. Here's what kills me about people like this. They really believe they're smarter than everyone else. They really think their manipulations are invisible. They really convince themselves that they're masterminds playing chess while everyone else plays checkers. But manipulation has a shelf life. Lies have expiration dates. Deception requires constant maintenance, and these people, they got lazy. They got comfortable. They thought once they planted the evidence, their job was done. They didn't realize that truth has a way of surfacing, that reality doesn't like being bent for too long, that the universe keeps receipts even when humans try to delete them. Every person they recruited into their scheme became a potential leak. Every lie they told became a potential contradiction. Every fake screenshot became traceable metadata. Every coordinated story became a pattern that could be recognized. They created a conspiracy against you. And conspiracies by their very nature require multiple people to keep secrets. But people talk. People slip. People get guilty consciences. People get angry at each other and suddenly decide to tell the truth out of spite. Their network wasn't a strength. It was a vulnerability. The more people involved in destroying you, the more people who could expose the destruction, and that's exactly what happened. Now let's talk about what this revealed. Because the evidence they planted didn't just fail, it illuminated. You now know who was really in your corner and who was pretending. You now know which relationships were real and which were performances. You now know who can be trusted with your vulnerability and who will weaponize it the moment it benefits them. This information is priceless. This clarity is worth more than anything they tried to take from you. Before this happened, you had suspicions. You had gut feelings. You had moments where something felt off, but you couldn't prove it. You gave people the benefit of the doubt because that's who you are. You assumed the best because you project your own integrity onto others. But now you have confirmation. Now you have evidence. Not planted evidence. Real evidence. Evidence they created themselves through their own actions. You know who texted who. You know who said what. You know who was in the group chat. You know who laughed at the plan. You know who added fuel to the fire. You know who stayed silent when they should have spoken up. You know who chose sides and which side they chose. Their attempt to expose you exposed them instead. And the beautiful thing? You didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to investigate. You didn't have to spy or manipulate or play their games. You just had to exist. You just had to wait. You just had to trust that the truth has its own momentum. They did all the work for you. They compiled their own evidence. They documented their own conspiracy. They created the case file that will define how people see them for the rest of their lives. Let me tell you what's happening to them right now while you're listening to this. They're panicking. They're scrambling. They're having emergency conversations trying to figure out how everything went wrong. They're pointing fingers at each other. They're blaming each other for the leaks, for the mistakes, for the exposure. The alliance they built against you is crumbling, because alliances built on deception can't survive the light. The people who came together to destroy you are now turning on each other, because that's what snakes do when the garden catches fire. Someone's getting thrown under the bus right now. Someone's being labeled as the weak link. Someone's being cut off from the group because they're seen as a liability. The same people who coordinated against you are now coordinating against each other. And you're just watching. You're just existing. You're just living your life while their world burns down around them. You didn't have to seek revenge. You didn't have to plot their downfall. You didn't have to become what they accused you of being. Their destruction is entirely self-inflicted. Their empire is collapsing under the weight of its own lies. That's not karma. That's not luck. That's mathematics. That's the inevitable equation of deception catching up with the deceiver. Here's what I need you to understand about what you've become through this experience. You've been stress tested at levels most people will never face. You've had your reputation attacked, your character assassinated, your reality questioned. You've had people you trusted reveal themselves as enemies. You've had to stand alone against coordinated opposition. And you survived. Not just survived. You came out with more information than you went in with. You came out knowing exactly who people really are. You came out with a network map of your enemies that they drew themselves. You're not the same person you were before this happened. You can't be. This kind of experience changes your molecular structure. It rewires your psychology. It upgrades your pattern recognition to levels that make normal social interactions feel like you're reading source code. You now see things others miss. You notice micro-expressions that betray true intentions. You catch inconsistencies in stories before they're finished being told. You feel energy shifts in rooms before anyone speaks. They tried to break you, and instead they forged you into something far more dangerous than you were before. Let's talk about what comes next, because this isn't over. Not for them. See, the evidence they planted against you is now evidence against them. The screenshots exist. The messages exist. The coordination exists. The conspiracy exists. And it's documented by them. Every person they tried to turn against you now has questions about them instead. Every lie they told is now being examined under a microscope. Every relationship they have is now contaminated by the revelation of who they really are. You don't have to do anything with this information. You don't have to launch a counter-campaign. You don't have to seek revenge or justice or vindication. The truth is already doing that work for you. But you should know that you hold power now. Power you didn't have before. The power of knowing exactly who these people are, while they have no idea how much you know. The power of watching them operate in real time while they think their covers are still intact. The power of choosing when and if and how to deploy what you've learned. That's a position of strength. They never intended to put you in. They wanted you powerless. They wanted you defensive. They wanted you so busy fighting their accusations that you'd never notice you were holding all the cards. But you noticed. And now you're sitting at the table with a hand they dealt you themselves. Here's the final truth I want to leave you with. People who plant evidence against others reveal far more about themselves than they ever reveal about their targets. The willingness to fabricate, to manipulate, to coordinate destruction. That's character. That's identity. That's who they are at their core. You didn't make them do this. Their hatred of you didn't make them do this. Their fear of you, their jealousy of you, their inability to handle your existence. That's what made them do this. And now everyone knows. Not because you told them. Not because you ran a campaign. Not because you sought to expose them. But because they exposed themselves in the act of trying to expose you. There's something poetic about that. Something almost divine, like the universe has a sense of justice that operates on its own timeline, in its own way, through mechanisms we can't always predict. You were protected, not by luck, not by chance, by something deeper. Something that saw what they were planning and allowed it to unfold in a way that would ultimately reveal them rather than destroy you. So here you are, standing in the aftermath of their failed operation, watching their network crumble, holding information they don't know you have, stronger than you were before they tried to break you. They planted evidence against you and accidentally exposed their entire network. Let that be the last lesson they ever teach you about who they really are. Now walk forward, not with anger, not with revenge, just with the quiet knowing that you see everything now, that you know exactly who these people are, that you'll never be fooled by them again. And that terrifies them more than anything they tried to do to you.
They'll regret ever crossing you. They regret ever thinking they could play with you, manipulate you, lie to you, disrespect you, and walk away without consequences. They really thought you were just another person they could treat like nothing. They thought you were someone they could use until they got bored and then toss aside like trash. But what they didn't realize is that you set the bar higher than they ever expected. Not because you were perfect, not because you begged for love, not because you needed validation, but because you showed them a version of care, a version of loyalty, a version of love they had never seen before. You poured into them in ways nobody ever did. You understood them when even their own family didn't. You stayed patient when everyone else would have walked away. You gave them chances you should have given to yourself. And they took every single one of those chances and threw them back in your face. You weren't the problem. You were the blessing they weren't mature enough to keep. And now that you're gone, now that you pulled back your energy, your peace, your time, your unconditional support, they're drowning. And the funniest part? They didn't believe you'd ever leave. They thought you'd always stay because that's what everyone else always did. They thought you'd keep forgiving, keep understanding, keep giving, keep hurting yourself just to keep them comfortable. They crossed you thinking you'd never stand up for yourself, thinking your heart was a weakness, not knowing your heart was your strength. When you finally walked away, when you finally said, "I choose me," everything changed. Their little fantasy cracked. because now they have to face the reality that the only real person in their life, the only one who genuinely gave a damn, the only one who didn't have hidden motives, is gone. And trust me, they feel it. Even if they pretend they don't, even if they act cold, even if they post pictures and stories looking unbothered, even if they try to show off their new options, none of it is real. None of it touches their heart the way you did. None of it fills the void you left. Because now life is showing them something. Life is showing them them. Not through your eyes, but through the eyes of people who are just like them. People who lie, people who take, people who drain, people who manipulate, people who pretend, people who don't know how to love. The people they're meeting now, they're nothing like you. They're mirrors, reflecting their own behavior right back at them. They're meeting people who play mind games, who breadcrumb, who disappear without warning, who cheat, who betray, who have no loyalty, who don't care about their soul, who don't care about their growth, who don't care about anything except what they can get. And guess what? They deserve it. Not because you want revenge, but because this is the universe showing them what you dealt with. This is life giving them a taste of their own medicine. This is karma playing its part. You gave them love, and they returned it with disrespect. You gave them loyalty, and they gave you excuses. You gave them understanding, and they gave you chaos. You nurtured them, and they drained you. You opened your heart, and they walked all over it. But now they're the ones being left on red. Now they're the ones being lied to. Now they're the ones being betrayed. Now they're the ones wondering, what did I do wrong? Now they're the ones trying to fix things with people who don't care. They're getting hit with their own behavior, and it hurts way more than they expected. They're comparing everyone to you, even the people they swore were better, even the ones they thought would replace you, because no matter who they meet, no matter who they talk to, no matter who they date, nobody has your heart, nobody has your soul, nobody has your purity, nobody has your energy. They thought the grass would be greener. What they didn't realize is that you were the only one watering it. And now they're sitting in a dried up field, trying to pretend they're okay. But they're not. They're broken. They're lost. They're confused. They're hurting. Because the person who would have healed them, the person who would have supported them, the person who would have loved them through everything, isn't there anymore. And the worst part for them, they know it's their fault. They know they crossed the one person they should have protected. They betrayed the only one who showed up. They lied to the only one who was honest. They hurt the only one who cared. They walked away from the only soul that was genuine. They'll never forget that. Ever. In fact, every time they see someone who reminds them of you, they feel that sting in their chest, that tight feeling, that regret, because they know deep down they lost something they can't replace. You weren't a phase. You weren't a temporary moment. You weren't just another connection. You were the turning point in their life, the one they mishandled, the one they undervalued, the one they crossed, and that's why they'll regret it forever. But here's the best part. You're not waiting around for them to realize it. You're not looking for closure. You're not holding on to the pain. You're not hoping they come back. You're too busy growing. You're too busy leveling up. You're too busy discovering who you are without them. You're too busy healing. You're too busy becoming what they never believed you'd become. They crossed you thinking you'd stay down. But you're rising You're becoming someone they can't reach, someone they can't manipulate, someone they can't use, someone they can't break. And trust me, that's ripping them apart on the inside. Because the moment they lost you was the moment their life took a downward turn. And the moment you walked away was the moment your life began ascending. They're watching you, even if from the shadows. They're keeping tabs. They're checking your social media. They're replaying old messages. They're reminiscing, not because they miss the drama, but because they miss the peace, the comfort, the safety, the authenticity that only you gave. So you think they forgot about you? They didn't. You think they moved on? They didn't. You think they're living their best life? They're not. They're just trying to survive the consequences of losing you, and that's why they'll regret ever crossing you. Not today, not tomorrow. But every single day they wake up and realize they will never get another you. But here's what they never expected. They never expected you to outgrow the version of yourself they thought they could control. They never expected you to evolve into someone they couldn't manipulate. They never expected you to become stronger because of the pain they caused. They thought crossing you would break you. Instead, it awakened you. You're not the same person they left behind. You're wiser now. You're sharper now. You're more guarded, but in the best way possible. You're not cold. You're selective. You're not heartless. You're healed. And they feel that distance, that silence, that space where your energy used to be. It's suffocating them because before they could reach you with a simple message. They could distract you with a little attention. They could pull you back with a few empty promises. But not anymore. Not after everything you've learned. Not after everything you've survived. They used to have access to you. Now, they don't even have the privilege of your presence. And that's what eats them alive the most. See, when someone crosses you, they expect you to chase closure. They expect you to explode, to break down, to beg, to explain yourself over and over, but you didn't. You walked away with dignity, and that silence did more damage than any argument ever could. They wanted a reaction. You gave them none. They wanted you to beg. You never did. They wanted you to crumble. You stood taller, and now they're sitting there replaying everything they did, realizing they pushed away the one soul who genuinely cared. They remember your kindness now. They remember your patience. They remember every time you forgave them, every time you showed up, every time you believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves. Back then, they didn't appreciate any of it. But now those memories haunt them. Because they can't recreate what you gave. They can't duplicate your energy. They can't replace your presence. Every new person they meet feels hollow, surface level, temporary. Nobody connects the way you did. Nobody understands their silence the way you did. Nobody listens without judgment the way you did. Nobody sees them the way you did. They didn't just lose a partner, they lost their safe place. And that's the thing they regret the most, because they thought you'd always be there, no matter how deeply they cut you. They thought your love was unbreakable. They thought your loyalty was permanent. But you finally realized something. You finally realized your value. You finally realized your worth. You finally realized you were holding on to people who were incapable of appreciating you. So you let go. And the moment you did, life started opening doors for you that they will never have the privilege to walk through. Your peace grew. Your self-esteem repaired itself. Your clarity sharpened. Your standards rose. Your energy shifted. You became someone they could never handle. Now, they regret crossing you because they're watching you become the version of yourself they never believed you'd reach. You're glowing in ways they didn't expect. You're moving in silence, in ways they can't track. You're elevating in ways they can't understand. You're attracting people they never thought you'd attract. You're getting opportunities they thought you weren't worthy of. And all they can do is watch. Watch and regret. Watch and wonder. Watch and wish they hadn't sabotaged the best thing they ever had. Because for the first time in a long time, they're sitting with the reality of their own choices. They crossed someone who had nothing but good intentions for them. They crossed someone who truly wanted to see them win. They crossed someone who showed them unconditional care. They crossed someone who never wanted to hurt them. And now, the universe is showing them what happens when you hurt a pure-hearted person, when you betray someone who only wanted to love you, when you disrespect someone who only wanted to help you grow. They get the life they created, not the one they fantasized about, not the one they pretended to have, but the one their actions earned. So now they're sitting in rooms full of people feeling lonelier than ever. They're surrounded by shallow connections, empty conversations, temporary attention, and meaningless validation. They're realizing something important. Attention is not affection, flirting is not loyalty, and company is not connection. They've lost the depth you brought. They've lost the sincerity you offered. They've lost the stability you provided. They've lost the emotional safety you created. And no matter how many people they try to replace you with, nothing fills the hole you left. Because you weren't a moment. You were a milestone. People like you don't come twice. People like you don't circle back. People like you don't wait around. And now that you've risen, now that you've evolved, now that you've awakened, they know you're gone for good. What hurts them the most is the realization that you didn't leave out of anger. You left out of clarity. You didn't walk away to hurt them. You walked away to save yourself. And the moment you chose yourself, the universe started aligning in your favor. Your energy became lighter. Your intuition became stronger. Your path became clearer. Your relationships became healthier. Your boundaries became firmer. Your spirit became freer. And while you're growing, they're shrinking. While you're healing, they're breaking. While you're moving forward, they're stuck in the same cycles they created. This is why they regret ever crossing you, because everything they thought they could get elsewhere, they can't. Everything they thought you were too much for, they now miss. Everything they dismissed, minimized, or mocked, they now crave. You became the lesson, not the mistake, not the enemy, not the villain. The lesson, the one that follows them everywhere, the one they think about at night when they can't sleep, the one they compare everyone else to, the one they wish they treated better, the one they know they lost forever. Your absence is their punishment. Your silence is their karma. Your growth is their regret. But here's the beauty of it all. Your story doesn't revolve around them anymore. You're not anchored to the past. You're not defined by who hurt you. You're defined by who you've become. You're stronger. You're wiser. You're calmer. You're more protected. You're more powerful. You're more aligned with your purpose. You don't need revenge. You don't need closure. You don't need apologies. Your life moving forward is the only proof you need. And that's why every time they think of you, They feel that sharp ache, that regret that sits heavy on their chest, that realization that they crossed the wrong one, the realization that you were the blessing they weren't mature enough to keep. They'll regret ever crossing you, not because you wanted them to, but because losing you was the moment they lost themselves. And you finally found you.